Hi, this is Alex from Moon Mode again, and I'm here to talk today about Time to Dawn's languages and cultures. Speaking of Time to Dawn, it's right here in front of us, and as you can see, it's looking pretty fantastic. So Chris and Rosie have been doing an amazing job in making the game look and feel like you're on this planet. And what a planet it is. We've discussed a little bit about the world in previous videos, and I'm going to just park this truck right here and switch that off because I can't talk and drive at the same time. Right, so in the previous videos I've talked a little bit about the background behind the game, the inspiration, the world that it's set in, and the world is something that I want to go into a little bit more detail about today. So, one of the main guiding principles behind Time to Dawn's development is this idea of plausibility and feasibility. It's a simulator, but I really want the game to feel like nothing is designed, nothing is purposefully created by some game designer. I'm not a game designer, I just do the music. So the world needs to feel like everything has its place and everything belongs. And on a slight tangent here, by the way, this video is very, very unscripted today, so it's going to be more rambly than usual. And also I have a cold, so keep your distance. Don't catch my cold. One of my favorite books that most of my friends tease me about because I always say I've only read one book, and that is The Silmarillion by Tolkien. And the thing that I love about The Silmarillion is it feels like every single page has, excuse me, every single page has 10 pages of additional context and story and background behind it. And I love that. I love the sense that every time you read it, there's, little connections being made that you realize, oh, that's that and that's this. The first time you read it, it may not make much sense, but on subsequent readings after that, it all starts to connect together and you realize how much detail there is in the world. And that detail and feasibility and plausibility of everything that Tolkien has put into that world is, for me, what gives it its appeal. And with Time to Dawn, I've been trying to simulate that. Like, I want this world to feel like everything is plausible and it makes sense that it should be there and it's not designed. So, in creating all of this world, I worked together with a wonderful old friend of mine who I've known for, about 30 years now, called Randall. And Randall is a bona fide polyglot. Like, he speaks just every language. And language and culture and how those things go together is such an integral part in making a world feel like it's realistic. I didn't really want kind of cobbled together, fantasy style science fiction, fictional languages. I wanted languages that would feel like they're grounded and they're realistic. One of the things that Randall has done for me is create rough frameworks for languages that are based on real-world Earth languages, some of which are somewhat unusual and not the standard Germanic ones or Middle Eastern ones or Northeast Asian ones, but things that are a little bit more unusual so that, again, much like Tolkien does, where his world elements are loosely grounded on real-world equivalents, it gives that sense of believability, I suppose. So let's have a look now at the map. Right, so you've seen this before, I believe. This is the world map for Kio. And if I just zoom in here, one of the things that Randall and I have done here is that we've split the world up into these 7 primary linguistic groups. So we have Kio, Kayala, Galaguan, Dunam, Oyo-Eo, Aviso, and Thwea. Now, each one of these is actually a language that Randall has constructed. And one thing that's very interesting is if you have a look, in general, you'll notice that languages aren't necessarily... So each one of these colors represents a different language, right? Or a linguistic group. You'll notice that a lot of these settlements and outposts, it's not the case that this region of the world is this language and this region of the world is this language. There's a general trend, but there's sort of a mixture. As we scroll across the world here, you'll see that there's a mixture of languages in different places. And this is one thing that Randall and I decided was quite important to make this world feel realistic, because There are several 100,000 people left on this planet, and if you're curious about what that's all about, I think the previous videos I explained roughly the storyline here. There's about several 100,000 people left on this planet, and the idea is that at this point in time in the history of this world, it makes sense that people will have moved around and mixed about a bit. And obviously here they're congregating into settlements and areas of similar linguistic groups, but it is not so much the case that this region of the world is owned or governed by this specific culture or people. And that's one thing that Randall and I thought would give this world a little bit more realism than, you know, your typical kind of fantasy game world map where different cultures will dominate certain areas. Another thing that you'll notice is in the larger settlements, for example, Masaram here, this one has 2. Pasmana also has 2. Edu here has 2. And as we go across here, some of the really large settlements, like Pavo here, for example, has actually 3. It has 3 different linguistic groups that live together. And again, if you think of the city that you live in, I think you would probably find that there are several linguistic groups that are present and living in that city. And this, again, is something that we felt more realistic, that in a large settlement, you're going to have different linguistic groups that are there. So let me show you this. Okay, so these are some examples of the language structures that Randall has put together for the project. So here are the languages again, Kio, Kayala, Gilligan, etc. And Randall has constructed these absolutely wonderful kind of proverbs and sayings in the local languages that mirror some of the cultural values of this group. For example, Kio, I'm not going to try and read these. That would be a little bit much, I think. Some of these are beyond me in terms of being able to pronounce them. But for example, the Kio group, we remain together, we are the future. Kayala, the generations of the forgetful pass and pass. The Kayala are ever the pillar. Galaguan, the sea brings wealth. The sea never leaves the Galaguan. These are great. Avisa, the Ava are defined by the core of their character and nothing else. Oya, Oya, we may be far from home, but we are never lonely. And Dunam, this one is particularly beautiful. Once splendorous winds drawing across bountiful fields, now along cliff sides and shelters, and across inlets and clefts. And finally, Thwea, sun, heat, labour, sun, sweat. This is our brilliance. Amazing. Yeah, Randall has done an incredible job in bringing these languages and cultures to life through these proverbs. Right, so this is all nice, but how is this actually going to manifest itself in the game? So one thing we would like to have in Time to Dawn, after you travel for a certain amount of time in a certain direction and you go from, let's say, if I come back to here, if you go from the western side of the world and you spend, days driving across to the eastern side of the world, we really want it to feel like you've traveled and you have come a long way. And this is now a foreign environment that you are in now. I mean, I imagine that if for example, I live in Sweden, if I took my car and I drove from Sweden to Greece, suddenly everything's different. Everything's in Greek. I don't speak Greek. I don't read Greek. And to a certain extent, local Greek people, because they're wonderful and friendly, they will help me out. But if I'm going to now base myself in Greece, I'm going to have to kind of, adjust my ways to working with Greek people. And hopefully after some years, I will start to develop an understanding of the Greek language, and some of the opportunities there in Greece will start to open themselves to me. This is something that we're going to try and simulate like this. So if I show you here, right, this is a mock-up of a interface at Pasmana settlement. So this is a mock-up that shows this is the local language here. Sorry, I don't actually remember which one that was, but this is just a mock-up anyway. Now the point is here, you can see that's through some pretty obvious iconography here. This is a job board, and on offer here are 5 jobs that probably involve taking goods from one place to another. So in the case of the top one, it will be some goods that are being delivered to Tilaganga, which is 245 distance units away, for a compensation of 24,000 credits. And I'm going to guess that that big button on the right there means accept, or yes, I'll take this job. So as you spend more time in Pasmana or more time with this cultural group, you're going to start to be able to parse this interface a little bit better. What I didn't want to have is this idea of the soft side of learning a language and getting used to a culture being mixed up with the technological side. So here I didn't want to have this situation where, after many hours of working for this cultural group, now all of a sudden the interface, you can read it and everything's in English now. No, in this case what I wanted to have is the separation with your character, you as the player. As you spend more time here, you start to get a sense for what things will mean. And I've tried to simulate that here with this non-diegetic overlay here. As you hover your mouse over one of these items, as you spend more time here, you'll start to be able to parse these things. For example, here, this job, deliver 14 crates, maybe crates to Jeg Nalne, sorry, Randall. Must arrive 3 nights. Caution, maybe? Pirates. Maybe not caution, maybe it could be, don't worry about the pirates, we've paid them off. But yeah, you sort of generally get this general gist that this is what it means. Hopefully, if you decided to stick in this area around Pasmana with these people, then eventually when you hover over that, you'd be able to read all of it. So that's the general kind of way that the languages will manifest. Again, the whole point behind this is that when you travel from one side of the planet to another, we really want it to feel foreign. It must feel like, okay, this is a group of people who are operating here in a different language. This idea of feeling a little bit like you don't belong and that you are isolated and you are trying to make your way amongst these people who originally were your kin, that is pretty central to some of the emotional goals behind Time to Dawn. All right, so that's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed this insight into the languages and cultures. And yeah, as always, if this is of interest to you and you would like to hear more, then please do the stuff, the YouTube stuff, and all the other stuff. And that's all. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.